Wait, Luke, what do you mean we're predicting Republican presidential nominees for 2024? It's only 2021!
Yes, Michael, I know, but once again, we are jumping the gun. Like you said, today we're going to be predicting who's going to be the Republican nominee in 2024. And the question that needs to be asked is, well, why are we doing this? And the reason why, I think, is because it is fascinating. Donald Trump changed the Republican Party. And therefore the question of who will succeed him, I think anyway, is inherently interesting. Now, of course, Donald Trump could run again in 2024 if he doesn't get impeached. And the fact that he met with Kevin McCarthy, who is the leader of the House GOP, means that the Republican Party are probably ready to welcome him back into the fold, and he could very well run again. And obviously, if he runs, he would be the favourite overwhelmingly, and he'd probably win. But, crucially, if he doesn't decide to run, or perhaps dies, I mean, we can't rule that out since he's so old.
Yeah, those Big Macs could catch up to him.
Yes, they very well might, Michael. But anyway, let's get on to our predictions. Now, how are we going to do this? Well, we have done a draft, me and Michael, and what is going to happen is I'm going to pick my first candidate, and then Michael will do 2 and 3, then I'll do 4 and 5, then he'll do 6 and 7, then I'll do 8 and 9, and finally he'll do 10. So we each are doing 5 picks, and yeah, maybe we'll look back on this in 2024, and one of us will be a genius, and one of us will be a loser who doesn't know anything about politics. So I'll go first, and my number 1 pick for the 2024 Republican presidential nominee is Marjorie Taylor Greene. And to be honest, Michael, Marjorie Taylor Greene was probably the reason why this video was conceived in the first place, because she's been in the news quite a lot recently, and I was thinking, well, maybe MTG, that's what I'm going to call her now, it's like AOC, she's MTG. MTG could very well run and win the GOP nomination after all that has happened in the recent days. The crucial thing about Marjorie Taylor Greene is she is authentically crazy. She doesn't have to pretend to be it either, and that's why she's got such a good chance at winning in 2024. That's the crucial thing, the craziness. I mean, just listen to this video, Michael.
One of them was when Q signs off, he puts 3 little crosses in a row, 3 little crosses, and that's how he signed off. Now, he signed off with 3 crosses in a row on November 6th, and within a matter of minutes, President Trump, in his tweet right after that on November 6th, he put, it was 7 minutes later, Trump put 3 little crosses on his tweet. And it was not, it was just more than a coincidence.
So yeah, there you have it. Donald Trump is Q, which is crazy in itself, but the fact that she believes in QAnon is crazy enough. And that's the thing about Trump. What he's done is he's attracted all these suburban moms, complete wackos like MTG, to the Republican Party via Facebook, and they all believe in Q. And therefore, it's only fitting that, in my opinion, she is the number 1 choice. She's the natural heir to Trump because of those suburban moms, because she is one of them. She also believes George Soros is a Nazi. The California wildfires were started by a Jewish laser beam from out of space. She thinks Sandy Hook and the Parkland school shootings were false flags. Like I said, authentically crazy. That's her brand. Nobody cares what she has to say on taxes or education. It's all crazy culture war stuff. She is the logical next step on from Donald Trump. And another crucial thing is that Donald Trump wasn't a politician. And you may be thinking, well, Marjorie Taylor Greene is a politician. But if Marjorie Taylor Greene gets removed from her committee assignments in Congress, which is what will probably happen in the next couple of days, then Republican voters will see her as being persecuted by the Republican establishment, certainly the Democrats, and that will help her. In fact, after these stories broke about her maybe being removed from Congress, she raised $1.6 million for her re-election campaign. And that is crazy, and if she did get expelled from Congress, think about that, she would be a martyr. And there is nothing that the Republican base love more than having a victim complex, and she would completely embody that. So I think Marjorie Taylor Greene, for me, if it's not going to be Donald Trump, it's got to be her. She's my number 1 pick for 2024. What do you think, Michael?
I like it. I think the only big distinction I would draw that I think could make it much harder for her is that I kind of feel with Donald Trump, he was just a grifter who had all this crazy stuff happen around him. And therefore, I feel like we can't undersell the fact that many people were able to disassociate Trump from all of these crazy beliefs, and that therefore he was able to get some moderate support. Whereas I wonder whether or not for this Marjorie Taylor Greene, the fact that she is a genuine true believer means that sure, she will get a lot of the crazies, but she won't get any of the people who will be like, oh, she's probably normal deep down, because it will be like too crazy. And I know we're talking about the Republican primaries, and there are plenty of crazies there, but I do think maybe even this is just a bit too crazy. But maybe I'm being too optimistic.
I certainly think so. I certainly think so. It's the next step, Michael. You know, we haven't seen the craziness slow down, and there's no reason to think it will anytime soon. So anyway, Michael, give me your first pick and the second pick overall for the 2024 Republican nominee.
Well, for me, it's got to be Ron DeSantis, Florida governor. You heard of him. And I think he's got a few big things going for him. And one, he's got that bigoted energy, which, of course, Donald Trump, you know, you've spoken about the crazy energy, and I'm here for that. But I think Ron DeSantis, he doesn't have the craziness, but he does have the bigotry. He has, much like Donald Trump, said some controversial things about different races, particularly Latinos, and I would think that a lot of Republicans, they really like that bigotry. And I would argue maybe that is more important for them than craziness, because there's the one thing they love most of all is taking these horrible, crazy ideas and packaging them up in a slightly more palatable package. And I think Ron DeSantis, he does have a bit of craziness going on, but certainly his main thing is his bigotry. He's been a strong attacker of Biden. There was an article from the Business Insider saying Florida Governor DeSantis emerges as top Biden critic. So people, obviously that's an important thing. You've got to attack the incumbent president. And of course, there is the fact that I feel like Florida has maybe emerged to have a more central position in Republican electoral strategy with how much of a big surprise Florida was in 2020. Obviously, that was because of the Cuban Latinos. However, one thing that we learned from Trump is that Cuban Latinos will be willing to vote for a president who has otherwise said some bad things about Latinos in the past, so that shouldn't be too much of an issue there. But mostly I think it's just that for the Republican electoral strategy in general, Florida was their big success story in 2020. It was the big moment where they really rose above the polls. I saw an article saying the top hopefuls for the Republican nomination were disproportionately from Florida, and therefore I think, yeah, Florida's where it's at. So those are my reasons why I think Ron DeSantis is a real winner.
Yeah, I think Ron DeSantis has a very good chance. I think your pick, it was a very good one. He has more of that Trump kind of fuck you swagger about him. You know, I'm not going to do whatever the libs say kind of vibe. He's a true right-wing cultural warrior. And you contrast that to Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's like, let's kill the libs. And I think that might be the sticking point in the 2024 GOP primaries. Is it own the libs or is it kill the libs? And Ron DeSantis is firmly on owning the libs. You know, he's not progressed to the crazy point that Marjorie Taylor Greene has. And yeah, I think he's, like you said, he's a very bigoted person. Yeah, and I think that might be what the Republican Party wants. Of all the major politicians, you know, senators, governors in all the states of America, I'd say the one most like Donald Trump is probably Ron DeSantis. So I think that's a good pick. What's your next pick, Michael?
Well, we're kind of going from one extreme to the other now, because my next pick is Nikki Haley. I didn't look up how to pronounce her name, but I did find out she averages about 5 to 10% in polls right now. Obviously, polls aren't too much, but I just think it's some funny context, even though I didn't provide it for Ron DeSantis, because I'm inconsistent. My main reasons why I think she's got a good chance is because, one, I've seen that corporate America really wants her to win. She kind of comes across as having a lot of moderate energy, and that's obviously something which the corporate establishment can really get behind. And I think an example of how she has moderate energy is that she resigned from Trump's White House, but on good terms. So I think that kind of shows where she's coming from in her attitude. And I also think another example is that despite the fact that she was involved with Trump's White House, she does have a pretty strong internationalist energy about her, which I think might appeal to, for example, neocons. She was the ambassador to the UN. She was heavily involved in moving the embassy to Jerusalem. And obviously the Zionist vote is important amongst evangelical Christians, apart from anything else. And she's also been a bit hawkish for Iran, which again I think would appeal to neocons. And I do have a good quote from her. She said, "You don't see anyone standing up for Iran. You're not hearing any of the Gulf states. You're not hearing China. You're not hearing Russia. The only ones that are mourning the loss of Soleimani are Democratic leadership and our Democrat presidential candidates." So I like that quote where she basically implies that Democrats are the only people, not just in America, but in the entire globe, who are pro-Iran. So obviously all of that stuff I think comes together to show somebody who is a moderate. You know, she's got that internationalist energy, but she was working in the Trump White House. She left it on good terms, you know, and obviously she's a fiscal conservative, and the corporate America, that's why they're backing her.
Well, Michael, here's the thing. This is why I think it's a bad pick. You've kind of just said why I don't think she's going to win it, because she's a corporatist politician. You know, she's a neocon. She wants to go to war with Iran. She is very, you know, hawkish, And one thing we learned from the Republican primaries in 2016 is the voters don't like that. That's why Trump won. So I don't know how you can say, yes, Nikki Haley, because she's corporate backed, because she's someone who, is a hawk, that's going to serve her well. If anything, that's going to count to her disadvantage. And you could argue that she's going to try and balance, go between being a full-on Trumpist and then, on the other side, a full-on neocon. She's going to try and walk the line in between those and, bring the party together like that. But that's going to be a very difficult task to do. I also remember that she removed the Confederate flag from the State House in South Carolina back when Dylan Roof murdered those 9 African Americans, and that could be used against her, the fact that she removed the Confederate flag. Again, she's not crazy enough, and I don't really think that she's got that much of a chance. Yeah, she's 10% in the polls, but that's not going to be good enough, unfortunately. I don't think it's a good pick.
Yeah, admittedly, that was a bit of a Hail Mary. I think that if there is a swing against Trumpism, which shouldn't necessarily be ruled out, then she would be in very firm standing, but I admit that it's entirely dependent on that. Anyway, what have you got for us next, Luke?
Well, Michael, my number 2 pick and the number 4 overall is a man called Mike Lindell, i.e. the My Pillow guy. Again, somebody who is authentically crazy. That's a very key trait here. He has promoted conspiracy theories about how Trump actually didn't lose the election, and I think he genuinely believes it, unlike, say, Ted Cruz. Just have a look, Michael, at this interview he gave just yesterday on Newsmax to see his craziness, his wonderful stupidity in full blossom.
We have all the election fraud with these Nominee machines. We have 100% proof. And then when they took it down about 3 weeks ago, and then I put it back up. My personal, it was a
Mike. Thank you very much, Mike. You're talking about machines that we at Newsmax have not been able to verify any of those kinds of allegations. We just want to let people know that there's nothing substantive that we've seen. So we wanted to talk to you about canceling culture, if you will. We don't want to relitigate the allegations that you're making, Mike, because we understand where you are. So let me ask you this. Do you think that this should be temporary because it appears to be permanent? Could you make an argument that it is temporary?
What?
Could you make an argument that this could be a temporary banning rather than permanent?
No, I want it to be a permanent because you know what? They did this because I'm revealing all the evidence on Friday of all the election fraud with these machines. So I'm sorry if you think it's not
Mike,
it's real.
Can I ask our producers, can we get out of here, please? I don't want to have to keep going over this.
Actually,
we at Newsmax have not been able to verify any of those allegations that you're...
Mike, hold on a second. Everybody hold on a second. Mike, hold on 1 second. Let's talk a little bit about just what is happening overall in terms of censorship of...
Trying to cancel out my company and myself. In this country, it's cancel culture.
So yeah, as you can see from the interview, maybe not all the lights are on upstairs, as it were. And of course, there's the irony of Newsmax having him on to talk about cancel culture when indeed they are not letting him talk about something, which is just hilarious overall. But yeah, I think that proves that, he's got that crazy energy. He also paid for the bail of Kyle Rittenhouse, the 17-year-old Kenosha murderer too. And he is going to run for Minnesota governor in 2022 as well. That might hurt his standing if he loses, but if he wins, well, that could be a major boost for his candidacy. Crucially, again, currently he's not a politician, but he is a businessman. Of course, I said he founded My Pillow. And like Trump, if he can somehow convince people that he knows how to run a country and he's really smart, since Trump's base are morons and you think if you can run a business, you must be a genius, they have that kind of attitude. And if this guy can convince Trump's base that, yeah, he could run the country well, like his business, then I think that could help too. Yeah, I think at the moment, at least right now in 2021, this guy would be one of my front runners. What do you think?
Well, again, you are really banking on this crazy card, which I do not begrudge you. I think it's a reasonable thing to do. However, the only thing I'm thinking that could work against it is this guy, he sounds kind of a bit flustered, and this is really all I'm going off. And I wonder if he has, when Trump speaks, he kind of has a certain commanding authority with just his intonations and the way he speaks, whereas this guy kind of sounds like he's struggling to dominate and control the conversation, and therefore I couldn't really see him being able to do that in a debate. I think he'd just be kind of there rambling on. And I can imagine that in a debate, he would just be rambling on and probably wouldn't really be able to convey himself properly as presidential.
Yeah, there is a part of him which seems to be a bit, like you say, flustered, and that does concern me. But I think overall, the substance matters. And if the substance is crazy, then, the Republican voters will want to get hooked up to it. And I think Mike Lindell does bring that. And again, the business aspect can't be forgotten. Let's move on to my next pick, number 5 overall, which is Josh Hawley. Now, the thing is with Josh Hawley is he is genuinely a fascist. And that is unlike somebody who he's being compared to, another senator, Ted Cruz. I believe Josh Hawley is probably the closest politician to Tucker Carlson without actually being Tucker Carlson. This is a guy who has complained about elites in society and that they were destroying America, which actually got him in trouble a few years ago, as it made him sound like a Nazi, talking about how the Jews are running everything and destroying everything, etc. So that's the kind of guy he is. Very big on cancel culture and how the conservatives are being persecuted. He goes on the most watched cable news show every night, almost, to say that. And, of course, that plays into conservatives' victim complex perfectly. He was also, of course, one of the people fighting against the election of Joe Biden. He had that famous photo of him raising his fist in the air on the day of the insurrection. And I don't think he has the baggage of Ted Cruz either, just comparing to him once more. But, again, he's not crazy, he's calculating, and that does set him back. I've used this analogy before, but Donald Trump is like the drunk guy at the end of the bar, as many people have said, and Hawley, with his college degrees and his overall look, seems to be the complete opposite of that. But again, Tucker Carlson, somebody who is very popular with Trump supporters, and like I said, Josh Hawley is the closest thing to that. What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, overall, I mean, I do know about Josh Hawley. I know about him as a person. Obviously, I've heard what you've said there. And I am struggling to think of any active reason why he wouldn't be able to succeed. It would be nice to say because he's a fascist, but let's not kid ourselves. So all I can really say is that the only thing that's standing in his way is maybe that he's not as prominent. And also, I mean, he isn't as crazy, which of course has been what you've been banking on so far. So I do kind of wonder if he'll be able to bring that big energy, that high energy. But really, that's the only thing that's standing in his way, that, and he's not particularly high profile.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. I could see that definitely being a reason against him. What's your next pick, Michael?
Well, I'm going to go for somebody who's very high profile, Mike Pence. And there are a few reasons why I think he could be the case. I think it's very variable because I was, again, looking at the polls and I saw that for 2024, it ranges between 10% and 45%. And significantly, those low polls were immediately after the election. I am aware there is a degree to which people might say that he betrayed Trump, but I do think that could work to his benefit because he does have that association with Trump. There is an extent to which the VP is the natural successor, of course, and he still has that association. Of course, he does have that benefit of being an evangelical Christian and a fiscal conservative. Both things, I would say, appeal to the mainstream of the Republican Party in a way that Trump might traditionally have not. And yet, he does have some off-the-wall bigoted beliefs. Of course, he's famous for his conversion therapy thing about electrocuting gay people, and I'd say that's something which a lot of the bigots in the Republican Party could get pretty on board with. So overall, he has that aspect of standing in opposition to Trump, which I think maybe will make some of the moderates think, oh, he's a slightly more reasonable alternative, kind of a moderating influence, somebody who they might project onto the things they liked about the Trump presidency. But really, the question, of course, is will the Trumpers forgive him for what they might perceive to be a betrayal? And ultimately, I think that might come down to how Trump is viewed in the future.
No, Michael. Why? They love Trump. You're right. It's like he's the opposite. He's the opposite of Donald Trump. He's fiscally conservative. He's not like Trump at all. And then and he went against Trump as well. And I know he's doing well in the polls. He's like 21%. But at the end of the day, if you get a group of people attacking Mike Pence, saying he's not loyal to Donald Trump, and the fact that he didn't defend Trump on January the 6th, so it'd be, kind of true, I don't think he's going to have a chance if it's a one-on-one scenario. He's not going to come out on top. He has no charisma either. And if he also gets close to the nomination, Trump will probably endorse whoever his opponent is, because he does not like him. So yeah, I genuinely do not think that he's got a chance of winning in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I mean, the big thing I was thinking is just because he is, of course, the vice president, and that is considered to be, as I already said, a natural successor. But obviously, he's reasonably far down on my list. And I should say, I still do think the people below him on this list have less of a chance. My next pick is Ted Cruz. So Ted Cruz, the thing is, he's been around for ages. And that's something which, I guess, in a weird way, it makes him seem, he's got a reputation as, like, I don't know, kind of a cockroach. Who just sticks around, but it kind of does add to his appeal as like a traditional Republican. At this point, he just feels like such a fixture. that I think maybe the average traditional Republican would look to him and immediately think, oh, it's that Ted Cruz guy. He's the Republican who's been around for ages, and they'd kind of have that immediate association of him with the Republican Party of yore, because he does seem to have been so prominent in that regard. But of course, he's also been a very big fan, a very loyal supporter of Donald Trump. He stood arm in arm with Trump against the attempts to steal the election, and he is very prominent in denigrating the electoral process, including multiple legal disputes against Biden's victory. Obviously, he's been a huge supporter of Amy Coney Barrett. He's been on Trump's side. So Ted Cruz, he's got that association with the traditional Republican Party. I think I did hear a lot of traditional Republicans in 2016 were on board with supporting him, and if it hadn't been for Trump attacking him so fervently, he probably would have been the front runner. And now, he's locked the Trump supporters down too because of how much of a loyal supporter he was to Donald Trump. So how could he not possibly be the big winner?
Yeah, of course, there are points for him, and I think he's definitely a better pick than Pence, for instance, but the problem is he is a slimy freak who nobody likes. I mean, this guy has clearly wanted to be president for so long, and that's why he's been sucking up to Trump. I mean, if we compare the two Ben Garrison cartoons of him from when he was competing with Donald Trump to when he was backing him, you can see the difference. Trump's dunking on him, and then Cruz has portrayed as Superman saving American democracy. That's what he's been working for these last 4 years, and he's achieved it, and he's incredibly craven. But the issue is he is too smarmy and unlikable. He doesn't have that Trump energy. The drunk guy at the bar, etc. Plus, he can be easily attacked because of what he said about Trump in the past, and also his wife works at Goldman Sachs, for instance. He did work for quote-unquote big tech as a lawyer, and that won't be good if that gets unearthed. So I think there's just too much baggage with Ted Cruz to make him a viable candidate in 2024.
Basically, I mean, I'm very aware of how slimy he was, and while I was trying to make my case very strong by not mentioning his bad aspects, that is why I think he is even a less likely pick than old Mike Pence.
Okay.
So yeah, what's yours?
So my turn now, Michael, and the 8th pick and my 4th overall is Donald Trump Jr. Now, of course, Donald Trump Jr. is the son of Donald Trump. I think everybody knows that. And I saw recently in a poll he was doing quite well. He was at 10% in a field of about 15 people. Again, he's been doing this Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz kind of thing of owning the libs, but in every speech he gives, it seems like he's on cocaine. Just seems like he is, of course. That means that he's nervous and apprehensive when he talks, and there is just no alpha energy. Just another dweeb, nothing like his dad. So you may be wondering, well, why have I picked him at 8? I've thought about this. What if Donald Trump actually dies? What happens then? Surely after that he will skyrocket up the polls, since he will get a sympathy vote. He'll be able to talk about how his dad loved him, and his dad's dying wish was for him to become the next president of the United States. Now, he's not a favourite of mine, and of course he's quite far down the list, but of course that is a scenario which I could see happening, and he's of course got great name recognition as well. It can't be ruled out that Donald Trump Jr. might be the Republican nominee in 2024. What do you think, Michael? Yeah,
see, I did have some criticisms. Firstly, that I think the nepotism of it all would be a bit reminiscent of the kind of establishment thing that you'd think Trump supporters would dislike. Although, having said that, the flip side there is that their capacity for hypocrisy can never be overstated. But there was also the aspect I was thinking of, well, if Trump's not running, why would anybody go for discount Trump? And I will say with that caveat of what if Trump dies, then his chances become much more viable. Because yeah, if Trump's still alive, it's kind of like I say, why would you vote for discount Donald Trump? If Trump is dead, then yeah, he would become the real Donald Trump. And in that case, I would agree with you. But it's obviously out of Donald Trump Jr.'s hands unless he has his dad murdered.
Yeah, perhaps that will have to happen. But here's the thing, of course. Donald Trump does not actually like his son. So it won't be a case of if Trump Sr. decides not to run, he won't just endorse his son because, he doesn't really like him too much. But yeah, if he dies, hey, Donald Trump Jr., I think he's got a decent chance at it. And so my next pick, and the 9th pick overall, is a woman by the name of Kristi Noem, who is the governor of South Dakota. Now, Michael, you probably won't know who this person is, since, of course, they're the governor of South Dakota. Who the hell knows who she is? But she has gained a lot of attention recently because of the coronavirus. You see, COVID has hit South Dakota very hard. And, of course, because of that, South Dakota's death toll has risen incredibly high. Just have a look at this Fox News headline from yesterday. Kristi Noem on becoming a media villain for defending liberty. She went on the Laura Ingraham show to talk about how she's protecting Americans' rights, and not trampling on them. So in a kind of perverse way, Kristi Noem could actually benefit from the amount of deaths that have happened in South Dakota, just like Cuomo could benefit on the Democratic side for his handling of COVID. Even though he's handled it really badly, in my opinion, Kristi Noem could also benefit with the fact that it has killed so many people. It has showed strength from her, that despite all the deaths, she still refused to shut down South Dakota. And you look at her and you're like, oh yes, that is a Republican woman down to a T. So yeah, what do you think about that, Michael?
Well, I think the big issue there is name recognition. You, of course, mentioned the fact that I probably wouldn't know who she was when you mentioned her. And indeed, I didn't. I think it's unfortunate when your most immediate source of name recognition is probably going to be an association with a garden gnome. Not a good sign. Overall, something incredible would have to happen because there are so many other superior crazies. So at the end of the day, does she have something going for her? Sure, she does with the whole, not caring about people dying thing. Republicans love that. But obviously, she's this far down on the list simply because there are other people there who are more viable candidates.
Yeah, exactly. She just isn't that high profile. But interestingly, I looked this up on Google. Of course, Kristi Noem, her first name starts with a K, and her two daughters are called Cassidy Noem and Kennedy Noem, and they also start with a K. So KKK in the Noem family. And I don't know if that was deliberate, probably not, but it's just funny. And maybe that gets her an extra couple of % if people also figure that out in the Republican primaries. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a high-level dog whistle.
Yeah, exactly. Very high level. Galaxy brain dog whistle. But Michael, I've done my picks. Who was your last pick and the last pick overall?
Yeah, well, I think my strongest piece of evidence for this is that now I've really thought about it and realized the flaws with some of these other people. I feel like this guy probably should have been higher up because I'm going for Mike Pompeo. The main reason for this is, of course, that he was the Secretary of State, and that is, again, a pretty high up position in the line of succession. I believe it's traditionally considered third in line, and that's just one reason. He has that association with the Trump White House. Obviously, he doesn't have that association with betraying Trump. He stood by Trump when it came to the electoral fraud that happened. He famously, I think, when asked about transitioning to the Biden presidency, he said, "Don't worry, it will be a smooth transition to Trump's second term." So what an alpha. The other thing he's got going for him is he is much more of a sincere evangelical. Of course, coming of that is support for Israel and opposition for Iran. And he was actually asked whether or not President Trump had been raised for such a time as this by God, like Queen Esther, to help save the Jewish people from an Iranian menace. And he said, as a Christian, I certainly believe that's possible. So, he does have that evangelical thing going for him, which, of course, there were some sincere evangelicals in the Republican Party who couldn't really deal with Trump's, gamble profiteering and multiple affairs and things like that. So having that Trump energy combined with being a sincere evangelical, that could give him a decent proportion of the spread. And to be honest, I do think I probably should have put him higher than Mike Pence when I think about it. But, I've convinced myself, so there we go.
Well, you say you should put him ahead of Mike Pence, but I don't know, man. I mean, Pompeo, he just doesn't seem that crazy. He's a typical Republican politician who hated Trump before he won the nomination. He was a director of the CIA, and then, of course, was in Trump's Secretary of State. He's just a standard Republican, and his name recognition wouldn't be that great either. I know it's the last pick, so obviously we're nearly at the bottom of the barrel. But yeah, I can't see Pompeo winning. But I guess, yeah, we're at the end, so it makes sense. I don't think you put him too low, basically, Michael, overall.
Oh, so really? I'm right. You're basically you're telling me I should never doubt myself. Thank you, Luke. Yeah. Also, I want to point out that 3 people on this list have been called Mike. So yeah. Who knows? Maybe I'll be the next Republican nominee.
That's a good point. But yeah, overall, those are our 10 picks for the 2024 Republican nomination. Some honourable mentions at the end. Ivanka Trump, Dan Crenshaw, John Taffer, who's a reality TV personality, kind of like Trump, but he doesn't seem to be interested in politics, which is why I didn't pick him. And also Tucker Carlson, who, again, he could run if he wanted to, but, he probably doesn't want to. Why would he put himself through that? He's got a lot of money and he gets to be on TV every day spouting his stuff. So yeah, again, it may not be one of those 10 picks or one of our honourable mentions. I mean, who knows, really? Who knows after Donald Trump? But yeah, hopefully we've covered all the bases quite well. And I am banking on Marjorie Taylor Greene. But yeah, no matter who's in charge, Michael, I think we can all agree they are going to get absolutely smashed by Queen Kamala Harris.
Yes.
Yes, Queen. It doesn't matter who the GOP puts up. Kamala Harris is going to prosecute them into a loss.
She's speaking.
She's going to slay.
Do it! Just do it! Yes, you can!